The public comment period for Austin's future light rail system has ended. This was for the environmental impact statement, a key report to secure federal funding. Here to talk about this is KUT transportation reporter Nathan Vernier. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Rebecca.
All right, so let's talk about what happened last night, the conclusion of this public comment period.
Yeah, so it was a 60-day public comment period, an opportunity for the public to take a really close look at this detailed. I mean, the report is 16,000 pages. About 10,000 pages of that is just lists of addresses. So it was, you know, a few hundred pages of details, really, that about this light rail system in terms of the costs and the benefits. So last night was the last chance for people to leave their comment in a way that the Austin Transit Partnership will have to respond to. And then that all gets shipped off to the Federal Transit Administration for review. And ATP hopes to get a final decision from the FTA by the end of the year.
All right, Nathan, let's talk about the businesses and homes that could be demolished due to the transit system. You created a list. You mapped out dozens that could be impacted. How has the process gone for businesses in the light rail's path?
Well, that's right. Yeah, there's up to 64 businesses and up to 4 single-family homes would be displaced by this project. The Austin Transit Partnership did not release any list of those businesses like TxDOT did, for example, for the I-35 expansion. So KUT decided to make its own list. I drove around and checked out all of these places by just going through their maps and finding the buildings that have red thatching on top. Some businesses, some property owners had been notified. I found a few property owners that had not been notified, and many businesses that leased their spaces that had no idea what was coming their way. So it's not exactly fun to let these people know what's going on, which is what I had to do in some of these cases. ATP said they were doing their best to notify people, but you know, I would show up and just talk to folks, and they said they hadn't heard anything. So, you know, maybe it's luck of the draw, or maybe they just have a different way of going about notifying folks.
Let's talk about some of the big differences between a light rail system and a bus system. What are the benefits?
Well, light rail, I think the biggest difference here is that it would be able to travel faster than traffic by having its own separate lane in the middle of the street. That's, and in some cases, you know, normal general car and truck traffic would be prohibited on those streets, like, for example, along the drag in front of the University of Texas. The other advantages of light rail is these are much larger vehicles, so they can move a lot more people. They're more than twice as long as a Capital Metro bus, and they can be linked together. So we're talking about a system that would have trains coming as often as every 5 minutes north of Lady Bird Lake and during rush hour, and every 7.5 minutes north of Lady Bird Lake during off times, and, you know, double that south of the river, because it would branch off into 2 separate tranches south of Lady Bird Lake. So higher frequency, and most importantly, Rebecca, I think moving faster than traffic. I think that's what would make it appealing to more people.
Now let's go back 5 years ago. Austinites voted on a much larger light rail system. The updated, smaller map does not reach the airport, but that is a top priority extension. How has the conversation around that gone?
Well, yeah, so voters voted in 2020 on a map that was 20.2 miles long, and after some cost overruns, that got reduced the first phase to a little under 10 miles. Now, when they came out with that 9.8 mile map, ATP identified 2 what they called priority extensions. One up to Crestview from 38.5 Street at Guadalupe, which is, you know, where the terminus would be now, and the other proposed extension down to the airport. And what's happened more recently is ATP has said, of these 2 priority extensions, the one to the airport would have more priority. They want to build that one first because there's a lot of people clamoring for that connection.
All right, so the Austin Transit Partnership needs federal funding for this. What is the timeline to get this constructed? What are some of the possible roadblocks?
Well, we don't know exactly what the Department of Transportation, the Federal Transit Administration, will be doing under the Trump administration in terms of these large grants to build big transit systems. The Austin Transit Partnership hopes to hear back from the FTA by the end of the year about this in-depth environmental study, which is necessary for them to do just to qualify for federal funding. Now, whether they get that federal funding, of course, is a separate question. But under ATP's estimated timeline, which a lot of things could happen, they're hoping to start construction in 2027 and then for trains to begin service in 2033. Of course, that's a long way from now, and as I said, a lot could happen between now and then.
All right, we are out of time, but Nathan Bernier, KUT transportation reporter, thank you so much for sharing your time with us tonight.
Thank you, Rebecca.